May 7th, 2024. And this is our 9 a.m. board briefing meeting. Please let the record reflect that in the conference room, we have Commissioners French and Kearns, and joining us on Zoom, we have Commissioner Jordan. Commissioners Waldrop and CUNY are both traveling on county business. So we are going to lead off today with Lynn Kimball, the Executive Director of Aging and Long-Term Care of Eastern Washington.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. This is just our annual update, kind of how we did as far as data this last year, who we served. I did share a PowerPoint ahead of time. Did it make it here? It did?
Well,
oh, perfect. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so just a quick reminder about who we are. Really, we are your local area agency on aging. Our goal is to help older adults and people with disabilities stay at home. So keeping people in their homes, out of institutions unless appropriate. Next slide. And how we do this, our front door is our Community Living Connections program. So this is because it's complicated for people to navigate systems. There's so many different kinds of programs. It does get confusing. And so we have a team that are local experts in everything related to aging and disability service. And they do everything from basic phone calls to helping people really dive into what benefits and what assistance is going to help them. They help people apply for benefits as well. So we do a lot of long-term care applications, helping people get services set up in their homes. We've got counselors that work on Medicare. And then we also have a specialist who works specifically on dementia and answering questions about dementia and helping people with dementia and their family caregivers navigate and try to plan for how can they stay at home safely as long as possible. We also have 2 housing specialists who just work with people who are outside of the Medicaid system, needing assistance with housing that are older adults or people with disabilities. So if they've been priced out of an apartment, have an eviction notice, anything like that, they help people really try to navigate where can they get care and where can they get back into housing. And we had about 10,000 calls in Spokane County this last year. And the top need, of course, is long-term care, followed by dementia, and then followed by housing. So it is very, very helpful to have those specialists. And this is the full group of services because there's a lot of other pieces in our system, lots of eligibility categories and all of those things. That's why we have Community Living Connections, is to help people navigate. Some of the new pieces that aren't on here that were big activities this past year is we did have a grant for the Aging and Disability Vaccine Collaborative. So we were able to support local partners to do about 1,215 vaccines throughout our 5-county area. So that was COVID, flu, they did some RSV vaccines, pneumonia vaccines, and others.
So on these programs here, I'm assuming that there's an income threshold to be eligible for them?
On some of them, primarily on the Medicaid services. The rest of them are actually not income-based for the most part. There are a few where there might be like a suggested donation. There's some where there might be a participation based on income. But the vast majority of them outside of Medicaid are not income-based services. They're age-based.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, do you mind if I ask a question? Yeah, go for it. So the home delivered meals, yep. Is that a paid for service or is that a free service?
It is a free service. It's suggested donation only. So our vendor is Greater Spokane County Meals on Wheels. So they do home delivered meals all throughout Spokane County, and people get, here's a suggested donation. It is 60 and older. That's the only requirement is.
Okay. And then on the family caregiver support?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it starts with just information and assistance and problem solving with the caregivers. So, and it was really geared towards how do you support that unpaid family caregiver who's providing the care. Some of the services like respite care, depending on which eligibility we can get into, might have like participation towards the cost of that service depending on income. But we also have a couple eligibility categories if we can get them in under, we've got a specific Medicaid funding source that will fully pay for the cost of any respite as well.
And the last question is on the veterans directed care.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is a program out of our local VA system. And so we've got a group of individuals that the VA eligibilizes them, says, okay, you need support to stay at home. It allows us to provide case management and personal care. And they get a flexible monthly budget that they get to figure out how do they use it on services to stay at home. So if they want to save that up for a ramp, they can save that up for a ramp, or if they want to split it and just do, okay, it's personal care, it's what we need. That's
Great, thank you.
problem. All right, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, which is the data slide, and I'm glad I brought a copy because I can't see that far. So in 2023, like we served around 9,500 people in Spokane County. That isn't necessarily all encompassing because we do have a couple major programs that don't track data in the same system. So it's probably significantly more than that, but we are limited by our data systems. We do know that about 4,000 people got information and assistance by calling that Community Living Connections line. We provided nearly 3,000 hours of counseling for people about their long-term care options. That does include housing and dementia counseling as well. Around 4,600 received Medicaid in-home care services. So that is people 18 and older who get a paid caregiver to help them stay at home and stay in the community. So that is definitely the income-based service. Then our meal providers served over 200,000 meals to 5,000 seniors in Spokane County. And they've been working this past year, especially on reopening a lot of their meal sites throughout the county. So I think we're up to 13 meal sites with operating different days of the week throughout the entire county. We do care coordination services, and that reached close to 800 clients. As you can see there as well, quite a bit in the way of Medicare counseling, and quite a few people were helping to access the Medicare savings program. So helping for their Medicare premiums based on income. And you can see there numbers for a lot of other services as well that we provided in the county. And I will say overall in 2023, we spent about $18 million on services in Spokane County, not including care through the Medicaid system. So Medicaid in-home care services, case managers authorized about $180 million worth of services. So that is people getting personal care for the most part. So paying for those caregiver hours, as well as other supports that are helping that individual stay in the community and out of more costly facilities. And next slide, please. And this shows you as well as our age breakdown and some other demographics. So about 53% of people we serve are below the federal poverty line. So quite a few of our services are really targeted to people who are lower income, though we provide information and counseling to everyone. Certain programs are income-based. And you can see that most of the people we serve are over the age of 60, only about 25% are under 60. And next slide. And this one as well shows race and ethnicity distributions as well. So about close to 85% of people we serve identify as white. For the rest, you can kind of see how it's broken down. I will say the other categories, typically people who are selecting 2 or more races or ethnicity categories. And then the last slide. So I will say a couple pieces that are coming up later this year for 2024. We've got some new changes that are coming that we're going to get to pilot with the state later this year. to help people get onto services quicker that are applying for services for Medicaid long-term care. So we will be the first area agency on aging in the state testing what's called presumptive eligibility. So when we do that long-term care application, we will be able to actually start people with services right away if they qualify, and while they wait for the state to determine if they are officially financially and functionally eligible for Medicaid. Because that's often a 45-day or more process to get somebody eligibilized for care and services. So being able to start that much sooner will help us get that care quicker for people who really need that care and support right away. Another piece that will be coming on in 2025 is we are also adding another Medicaid program for long-term care called New Freedom that is actually very similar to the Veterans Directed Care Program.
We'll be able to watch this. We'll post it out on the Employee Connections website, probably by middle of next week. And we've got 2 topics on.
Are we bothering you?
So yeah, New Freedom will be coming to our area in 2024. We just let the state know we're going to take it on. The only other counties that do it right now are King and Pierce counties, but we'll be adding it for a region. So instead of the assessment saying this is how many hours of care per month you get, the assessment will give them a budget. So they'll have a lot more flexibility on how do they want to use their benefit, what kind of services do they need to support them at home, and then be able to roll over their budget from month to month if they need to save up for more costly services and supports. So we're excited to roll that out in 2025. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mine answered.
Okay,
All right.
it was great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Then next up, we have Justin. Do we know, is he in person? Oh, he is. Okay. Nobody to Zoom or? Except Chris. Thanks for coming, Lynn.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I just want to see. So thanks for having me. Thanks.
All right,
Hey,
Justin, take it away.
morning again, board. I'll actually let Wes start us off. And then I'll fill in the blanks.
All right.
Right, well, good morning. I'm Wes Sickoff from the prosecutor's office. I'm with Justin here. What we're asking for is I've prepared a resolution after communicating with the Community Services Department about how some of their contracts work through the legislative process with the board. And what we're looking to try to do is kind of streamline some of those processes to make them more efficient. Specifically, what I've done is I've prepared a resolution which delegates the authority of the board to execute what are called single case agreements. You've probably seen them on the agenda pretty frequently, and they tend to come in groups. And those single case agreements, the aerial view of what those are reimbursements to out-of-network providers for behavioral health services. And his department is kind of the administrative hub for those reimbursements. So what the resolution would do is authorize the director of the Community Services Department to sign off on those agreements without preparing a resolution and going to the board to get authorization for each single one. Now, the reason why we're asking for that is because county ordinance already tasks the director of community services to administer and enforce contracts, the behavioral health services contracts. And executing single case agreements are already kind of baked into the cake of these state contracts that we have with the healthcare authority, for example. I think DSHS might be involved in those as well. And so there are contracts that we kind of already have to execute at some point. They're already before the board. We know that they're going to happen because they're already part of these state contracts. And so what we're looking to do is just kind of streamline that process so we don't need to go to the board prepared for a resolution to execute each individual one after they've already been baked into this state contract cake that's already been executed by the board. So that's kind of what we're asking for, and a little bit of the context for the delegation. So I've prepared a resolution to that effect, and then Justin, I didn't know if you had anything additional to add to that about single case agreements.
Yeah, so single case agreements are, just a little background on those. Those are the services provided as part of the involuntary treatment. We are already responsible for the ASO to pay. So you see these as hospitals on the west side primarily. All of the hospitals in our region, we already have contracts with because we can provide that. Difference from why we do these single case agreements with those hospitals versus the contracts here locally. We have the ability to coordinate directly with these regional hospitals, and their partnerships are closer. And so in that arrangement, we can do our monitoring, our agreement on those rates, and then also determine how we coordinate services when they're discharged. In other areas, we don't. It's been challenging to get contracts with them, but more importantly, we can't do on-site reviews and or coordinate in the same way. Single case agreements allows us to, on a case-by-case basis, review those inpatient claims and then review them. Now, service has already been provided, and we're already determined whether or not we're going to pay that rate. So it's already liability incurred for services that the board has already agreed to. We're just coming back and looking at those and agreeing to a set rate. Now, that rate is a state rate, so it's one that the state has already negotiated. We don't give any higher, and we only pay what is reasonable and prudent for the service that we've entered into. That's why you see more of a boilerplate language for these. We just refer to a state rate and agreements that are already in place. And really putting in the contract in place, which we found historically, not only burdensome, but challenging because not only do they try to renegotiate rates and force us to pay higher, they usually employ some other burdensome requirements on the county in terms of expectations. So going this route is not only the most efficient way of addressing these claims when we receive those, but also puts in a better position to be able to respond to those legally and in terms of negotiating contracts.
So really appreciate your efforts to streamline the process and make it easier. You're right, they do consume a lot of paper without, a lot of legislative activity. Would it be possible, and that was an okay answer, to just like once a month, just provide us a summary that says, we did X and all of this, just so that we're aware of kind of what's going on. You don't have to go through the whole process, but just not more than 2 lines that say, we did this kind of a deal. Is that possible, or does that have any value to you? Because it would provide some value for us just being aware of what's going on.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think what you're asking for is maybe some sort of like feedback, or maybe just some periodic feedback or report.
I'm just like thinking like once a month, a summary kind of a deal, or if once a month is too burdensome, maybe once a quarter, a summary that just allows us to know, okay, we've done this kind of a deal. So because we're not going to see it on our agendas anymore, and I don't want to go through the whole process of resolutions and contracts, all that stuff. Just looking for is just a summary. I guess a good example is the CEO for the airport with his monthly report. He just says, list out. He's got authority to enter into a variety of different contracts because it's under $250,000. But he just provides a list of saying we did this, and it's just like 2-3 lines of saying that's what we did, just so that the board is aware of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. If that's the board would like, we can definitely provide.
Well, I can't speak for the board. That's just what would be interesting from my standpoint.
No, I mean, if it's once a month or once a quarter, I mean, just really keeping us in the loop. I mean, there was a lot of time prior to you being the director. There were a lot of things where it'd be like, oh, we do that in that department? Like
Yes.
so,
Yes.
since you've become director, there's been a lot more communication. I think all of us have a much greater understanding of the work
Right.
that your department does. And we don't want to lose that. So, but yeah, so if it's just an update once a month or once a quarter of just, hey, we did X, Y, and Z with these, I mean, so
Yeah.
it would be great.
Definitely. And would the board prefer that in an email form or briefing? I mean, that's,
It's good either way.
I find that there's a give and take between giving too much information because you guys are busy versus too little. So anything in any way we can definitely provide to the board.
I'd be fine with email.
Yeah, I'm good with it, even if it's just an email.
Yeah.
That's fine with me too.
Yeah, I don't want to make it more burdensome than it has to be. I just want to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, the legal's already reviewing it and we're already coordinating all these anyway.
Yeah.
So making that available actually is very easy on our end.
Scott?
And your commissioner, just want to confirm, you're looking for contracts executed that has been delegated authority to Justin in this case. Here's this contract with this individual for this reason. Okay.
Excellent.
And it can be as brief as just what you just said.
Commissioner Jordan, do you have something?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
I'm good. Thanks.
All right,
Okay.
excellent.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, Kyle. And maybe joined by Deborah? Oh, there she is. I didn't see you come in.
Good morning, commissioners. A couple items for you today. The first one has to do with the delegation of temporary access. So I'm gonna have Deb kind of walk us through this a little bit here and provide a couple of examples so that we could potentially put this forward for legislative action.
In order for the board to allow different parties to have access on county property, we usually go through a license agreement process where we figure out how much putting different conditions and costs on them having access to a county piece of property for a period of time. And what we're asking here is for a temporary use practically of one of the county's properties. An example, like Fire District number 3 wants to go through and do wildfire training in one of our county pits. And it's a 2-day class. And that's something that we should, that we're asking for this temporary permit. It would be, you know, he's asking a month ahead of time, and that would be an easy one. Another one would be where like the Department of Transportation owns a old pit that has lots of trees that had fire damage. And they need to just have their logging, well, not logging, their temporary forest people to go through and be able to mark which trees need to be taken out for the fire damage that had been done. And there's a very steep timeline on that. And that's something that we were, you know, that actually happened, that we needed to be able to allow them to come through our property to do. Another one, a temporary construction. We've got this, this is in the city of Spokane Valley. We've got our old railroad right of way, which is a property there. And they just want to go through and take some equipment in there to be able to put a retaining wall against on their property so that their stuff doesn't slough off into our stuff. So these are the kind of permits that we're thinking about having, Kyle, which would be less than a, you know, not longer than a year. It's just a short period of time, but mostly just maybe a day or two in length of time.
And what we found is that most of these, you know, don't necessarily have 2 months of notice that they can provide us for us to go through a briefing and a legislative process. There is a fee schedule that Deb has worked up that's very reasonable for, you know, getting a small amount of revenue that it would be potentially waivable for a public entity if there was mutual public benefit. But the ask would be that rather than bringing these to you one at a time, these temporary use permits, that authority gets delegated to the Senior Director of Public Works. And we would be able to do a license, basically permit for, you know, no more than a year, for cost, you know, pretty nominal cost based on how much property they're using. And not go through full legislative process for most of these small asks.
Thoughts?
So when you talk about costs, are we talking in the range of hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars,
Hundreds
It's
typically.
hundreds.
hundreds at the most?
Yeah.
And it's,
It's based off the assessed value. So I take whatever our property is, and if ours doesn't have an assessed value, I take an adjoining property's assessed value, get it per square foot. And then how much square footage they're using. In a 10-year period of time, you're supposed to get in rent what that property costs. So I divide it by 10. So that I've now got a yearly cost. And if they're only using it for a month, I divide it by 12. So I know how much it would be a month. Or I divide it by 365 days
yeah.
to find out what a day cost would be for them to be able to use it. And that's the formula that we're setting up for the cost and charge of using that ground.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan?
Two questions. How often does this usually come up? Number one, and then number two, are there any examples of private entities making such a request versus the public ones that you gave?
Certainly, I'd say less than half a dozen a year. The requests come in, maybe a good example of a private entity would be like Inland Power and Light, asking if they can stage utility poles at one of our pits for an area where they're doing a pole replacement project. Example of one that would be denied was when they wanted to do trials motocross in one of our pits. And risk management slapped that down very, very quickly. So that would be an example of, kind of working with one of our private utility partners versus something where we would be taking on a lot of liability, which we're not very interested in.
So nothing fun, Chris.
No fun allowed, right?
Pretty much. Scott? Interestingly enough, we were just working with our broker who's representing us on Monroe Court building, and he was helping give us some ideas on how to come up with the least cost for the small arms range for the Shrek building. And it's very consistent with what Deborah just came up with. It's an 8 to 12% cap rate, which is very similar to, it's right in the middle of it, divide by 10 and you got your cap rate. So I think they're right on target for that value.
All right, yeah, all good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we get to the real entertaining part of our show today. Wave number 2, road establishments. All right.
Okay, so as Kyle was alluding to, we're pushing through a whole bunch of establishments. We're gonna bunch them up for the briefing here, but obviously we'll have to do individual public hearings for them. So it'll be a little bit of a grind, but we'll get through them. I think there's 6 or 7 each. So we did put the phases together at least, so phases of flats aren't individual hearings. This first one's up off of Midway, North Spokane. You can see we just stubbed in a portion of a public road. The thought being here, long-term, we would love some connectivity north-south other than Hatch Road. We're just a little bit to the east of Hatch with this alignment. So long-term, we're hoping there'll be more connectivity just so Hatch is the only way north-south through this area.
I was actually out in this area just last week and there's Morton now goes up and curves and kind of S curves around. It connects over to another, I want to say maybe Wellington, I think might continue through this picture. There's a lot more road right there now than there is this.
Yeah, to the north, this has been an effort the whole time this area's been developing, and it's been hard because it's a mix of public and private roads, but all the private, for the most part, with a couple exceptions, aren't gated. So people walk on them, they bike on them, they get to enjoy using them for other purposes. And Yeah, just be nice for all kinds of reasons, have a little more connectivity in this area. So this looks unusual and frankly it is, but it is with the hope that long-term it will connect to something else as the area develops.
Is it only the red is what's being established, not the?
The public portion's only the red. portion.
Okay.
The rest of it's a private road.
Is it? Okay.
All right, next slide, Mrs. Ron. All right, the next establishment, this is on the Browns Mountain, South Hill area, Chester Street, 65th.
Before you get, just a quick question. So the red is the public road, so that's what we're going to snowplow.
Yes,
I'm sorry, it's just a question that popped up into, do we just push it to the end or
yeah, no, our guys, they
we're
will,
gonna push
they
it
will
all
do
the way to the end of the road?
they'll probably plow the whole street, come
Okay.
around at Hammerhead and. Yeah, this is not very functional in the temporary state, but long-term, we hope that the alignment's supposed to bend to the west and go through that next piece to the west and.
Okay.
We will see, yeah, but for the short term, our guys will make do and they will go to the nearest turnaround, which is the Hammerhead there.
Okay.
If they plow it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is it's a flat residential, so it's the lowest tier. We go in when we need to.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. This is South Hill 65th. 65th was existing. Custer is a new road. And this is part of a larger plat called the Morgan Murphy plat. It's from the early 90s. It's a very old plat that keeps getting extended. Lee Campbell's the owner. It's family property and they don't seem to be in a huge hurry. This portion has been built for a while now. And long-term, it'll connect to the north to the existing alignment of Custer, which is an existing gravel road serving a whole bunch of houses going up the side of Browns Mountain. So we're hoping they do that next phase before too long. This has a cul-de-sac on the end. Custer Street does, as does 65th. So we do have good turnarounds because it may be a long time before they do the next phase. It keeps tracking the way it has been. But both those roads are built and certified, good to go and have been for a while now. Next slide.
Oh, so just kind of an FYI, I was at a function last night and a couple of property owners approached me and said, were you aware? And I said, no, that evidently the city has approached some of the property owners south of the city with the expectation of extending sewer and water further to the south and finally annexing that area into the city. They evidently, according to the property owners, they said, the city thinks that's an opportunity for growth for the city. And so they're now exploring, I think is a good way to say it, options to be able to move to the south. So just an FYI for you.
First I've heard of it. So
Yeah, last night was first I heard of it and I'm going, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
well, they are the sewer and water purveyors, so I
Yeah.
mean, it is a JPA with them.
Yeah.
We work with them now, as is the next slide. This is another city sewer and water. This is off of Upriver Drive. You can see the river at the very south end of the bottom end of the picture here. And new subdivision, new roads. These, we would normally look at them a little harder for public roads, but being city sewer and water, they're pretty adamant. They would like their utilities and public roadways. And we can argue that private versus public both ways. And so it was important to the city. So we went along with them and are making these public. There are good cul-de-sac turnarounds, so it has the access we need to maintain it. Next slide. Okay, we're back up north again. This is the estates at Chatteroy. This is kind of an interesting one. This is a rural cluster development where they've done a clustering of residential sized lots in a fairly rural community. If you've been to Chatteroy, it's a very small community. These are urban density lots. They're small lots. They're served by septics. There is a water system. I believe they're on Whitworth up there. But just a little unusual because we really have residential density in the middle of a very rural area, but it is directly adjacent to the Chatteroy community. And they, even though the aerial doesn't show it, they're obviously all built and certified in there. Next slide. Now we're back out on the West Plains. These are the additions of a couple of different subdivisions. You can see all the road names in here. I believe this is, yeah, Thomas Manor is the name of the plat, and it has several phases. These are the two big phases, and I believe there's a remainder phase to the east that'll be coming in later. Next slide. The last one is a rural subdivision. I believe it's large lot. I don't think they're small lots. And they built two new public roadways. This is north of Bigelow Gulch, and if you know where Lehman crosses it, it's east of Lehman and north of Pleasant Prairie, and just two roads. We already did the roads to that you see in the blue circle there, the Summit and the portion of Whipple that served that portion, and this portion of Summit connects over to it. So it does make a loop, which is helpful in our world. That's it. Those are the establishments. Happy to answer any questions regarding it.
Any questions? Nope, that's great.
Thank you. And I think we have traffic code revisions next.
Yep.
Thanks, Ron. 4 traffic code revisions, 2 of them are actually part of the same one, part of an establishment we just looked at. This first one is North Road up in North Spokane County. And this moves through a little neighborhood here of Denison, and did a speed study on it, and it was suggesting 40 miles an hour on the portion south of Denison Chattaroy and 35 on the portion north. When our traffic engineer took a look at it, it felt very 35. These roads really are not through roads. People aren't using them to get long distances. It's all local traffic, and 35 felt very appropriate, and I agree with this recommendation. Questions? Okay, next one. This is the establishment we just looked at. So since we're establishing the roadways, we're also setting the speed limits. These roads, again, do not engender much through traffic because Pleasant Prairie and Lehman are both more major and more direct connections for people. So we're setting these at 35 also. And actually that section of Lehman that runs along the west side is already 35. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense to tie a 45 road into a 35 road. Next one. So the last one I have for you today is Spotted Road, north of Cheney Spokane Road. This section of Spotted doesn't have a whole lot of horizontal challenges in terms of the speed limit. It's posted 45 currently, but there are vertical alignment issues that limit sight distance and would require us to do a 35-mile-an-hour or reduced speed posting. Interestingly, in the national guidance, there are no reduced speed warnings for vertical curves, only horizontal curves. So the recommendation is to lower the speed limit to 35, and it feels appropriate. If you've ever driven that section, it's very up and down, and it's treed, and deer and different things jump out. My son actually hit a turkey on that section, so things come out of the woods. It happens. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Yeah,
I reached out to Doug Chase to let him know we're ahead of schedule, but I haven't heard anything yet, and then I asked Heather to come over and George to come over.
okay,
And so Lieutenant Elliott has a 9:30 meeting and he'll come over as soon as that's done.
okay. In that case, I think we're on to miscellaneous while we wait. Bat, do you have something for us?
Yes.
Media, press releases and proclamation.
So let's start with the press release.
Yes, there's a press release for the opioid settlement funds and the projects. Gina, have they received that?
It's gonna be shown on the screen.
Well, actually, I also have copies.
So the point here is to anticipate the board's action this afternoon. So once the board has acted, assuming that everything is on track, this will be ready for release. We're highlighting 7.2 million is this initial tranche of funding. 5.2 million for the 23-hour crisis relief and sobering center expansion. The 600,000 for long-term housing and treatment support services for parents and caregivers, benefits with NAS, 1.2 million in direct treatment services, the community expansion, behavioral health, triage, and sobering services, and 200,000 annually for other direct services, evaluation of system needs and gaps. So this is essentially what was presented to the board previously. And we have a quote from the chair and from Justin from Community Services included here for consideration. Any feedback?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks for your work on this. When I read it, I don't recall seeing if there was anything in there about, we'll be seeking proposals on, exactly what the contracts and projects look like. So my only feedback was maybe to use the language of we're setting priorities and then give some information that we'll be seeking proposals to get the specific contracts in place at a later date.
Okay, sounds good. We'll incorporate that.
The only observation I had was in the last line in the first paragraph. It's implied, but I just don't want to have any confusion. To improve the care and treatment for those struggling with addiction, I think you need to say opioid addiction. Otherwise, they could say alcohol or some other substance abuse and stuff. And so it's kind of redundant, but people that are struggling with addiction kind of might not catch that.
Targeted that way.
Yeah.
It's targeted, yep. Sure. Yep. To Commissioner Jordan's point, we'll add some language. The only two that are really going to be RFPs and contracts are the second and third bullet. But we'll make it clear, and I think that's a call out because then the community also knows that be on the lookout for some RFPs coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll make those revisions and move it to final and have it prepared should the board approve it this afternoon.
Okay.
I think that's the only press release we have today. We do have some proclamations on this afternoon. Do we want to brief on those real quick?
Just a reminder that you have National Nurses Week. Kathleen Thomas will be here to accept that proclamation. You also have Provider Appreciation Day, and Leanne Dixon with Harvard Park Children's Learning Center will be here to receive that proclamation.
Good.
So just to confirm, Commissioner Kearns, are you doing National Nurses Week?
Sure.
And then Commissioner French is doing Provider Appreciation Day?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
And we wanted to also do a quick preview looking ahead for June. So May was a busy proclamation month. There's still a couple more that are coming up, but looking ahead to June, I think we had one kind of on the docket for now that we're recommending. Adopt a Cat Week or Adopt a Cat Month for scraps as one of our business lines. It's also kitten season at scraps. But if there are any others that come into the offices that individual commissioners want to bring forward, let us know.
As long as they bring some cats to the hearing, we'll do the proclamation.
With some arms.
Everyone will be distracted by the kittens.
At one moment.
But seriously, commissioners, Scraps right now has hundreds of kittens in foster care. They're not old enough to be adopted, but they will be in June.
And I think that was the only ones that we were going to flag for you. Is there anything else on proclamations, questions, concerns? Sure.
Do we want to do anything recognizing Skyfest for the 22nd and 23rd out at Fairchild? Since they're putting on that show for the benefit of the community, I mean, some kind of acknowledgement of it, advertisement for it, whatever. Question?
Thinking like push it out via our social media, perhaps?
Yeah.
probably some things that we can grab that's already existing and we just promote it.
And get with the Basis Public Affairs Office, see what they have planned.
Can you also send that to HR, please, and then we'll put it in the news flash also, so that we can get it to all of our employees.
Sure.
Oh,
Thank you.
perfect.
I know last week was the, I think, maybe the 10th year anniversary of Shell 77, the plane that went down in Kyrgyzstan, so. Okay. Is that it? I think that's it.
That's it.
Alright, thank you both. Oh, Kyle.
I just have a moment for one more miscellaneous item. The Washington State Transportation Commission, the state body, is hosting their annual meeting in Cheney, June 26th and 27th. I just want the commissioners to be aware of it in case anybody wanted to attend. All or a portion of it. There's a tour in that morning, followed by meetings and presentations the afternoon, and Thursday morning is a Wednesday, Thursday. Matt Zarakor and I will be presenting at the end of the day on Wednesday. S3R3, Fairchild, there's all kinds of SRTCs presenting, City of Cheney. So just want the commissioners to be aware in case anybody does want to attend all or a portion of it. Let's let them know on your behalf if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm told that they want SRTC, since I'm chair of SRTC, wants me to do some kind of presentation or be part of that, so, but I'll know more, hopefully within the week.
It's in the Cheney City Hall.
Alright, thank you. Okay, that goes us back to Doug Chase. Plants Ferry business.
Morning.
It's hard to compete with kittens, but stormwater management can be fun too, very fun. And we're pleased to be briefing you on a project that we've actually started probably about 2-3 years ago. With the initial planning as needed to meet current stormwater management regulations. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chambers, who has prepared this excellent presentation.
Okay. Thanks for having us. Next slide. We're here to brief on the Plants Ferry Stormwater upgrades, the bid award, project 11767. With the end request to award the project in the amount of $850,506.82 during next week's legislative session. Next slide, please. So the location is at Plants Ferry Sports Stadium, specifically the Parks Rec and Golf Park Operations and Maintenance Facility, which is on the west side of the property, highlighted by the red circle. It's where Park Operations is operating from. On Upriver Drive. Next slide. Some background. In order to be compliant with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit, this project must be wrapped up by the end of 2024. The Park Operations Maintenance Facility is subject to several of the updated requirements listed within the permit. Placed on material storage, heavy equipment storage, and maintenance areas in order to be compliant. A brief summary of the identified pollutant generating deficiencies to be resolved include our shop drains, floor drains are lacking oil water separation, wastewater discharges untreated into cesspools. Gasoline and fuel storage tanks are lacking containment. Parking lots and traffic areas are unpaved, creating and increasing spill potential. And our lawn, vegetation, equipment, vehicle wash-off areas do not have treatment at all. Next page. So our scope to remedy those 6 deficiencies are to install new floor drains with outfall routed through oil water separation prior to sanitary sewer discharge. The wastewater will be routed through sanitary sewer system. We will be building proper containment for the gasoline and fuel tanks to decrease spillage. We'll be paving all parking and traffic areas with asphalt or concrete surfacing. We'll be installing proper vehicle and equipment wash area with waste directed through oil water separation prior to sanitary sewer. And we will be installing a stormwater runoff collection system and bioinfiltration pond as part of the project. The next slide shows a graphic of the stormwater design, stormwater system design. All routing to the west side of the area into a bioinfiltration swale. Next slide depicts the sanitary sewer system, catching all wastewater from the entire facility, including shop floor drains and equipment vehicle wash area, which will be routed through a large oil water separator, all prior to sanitary sewer. Next slide, please. So our next steps, very preliminary timeline. The week of May 13th, we hope to provide the contractor with a notice to proceed. And then construction goes underway with substantial completion identified as November 1st. Final completion December 31st in order to be compliant with the ES Phase 2. On our final slide, we are requesting the board to award the project 11767C to the lowest bidder, Red Diamond Construction, for the base bid plus add alternate amount of $850,506.82 next week during the legislative session.
All right. Any questions? No. All right. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Here is Heather.
Good morning.
Hello.
This morning I have the contract with the Spokane Regional Long-Term Care or Recovery Group, excuse me, under our state individual assistance contract with the military department. Took us a little bit to get this contract ironed out. It is backdated to December 1st, so they can incur their cost, which matches up with our state contract. Contract amounts $50,000. We're paying for salaries associated with some of their staff positions. Any questions?
No, pretty straightforward.
Pretty easy.
Thank you. All right, George. And Pavel.
Yeah, so excited to be here today to share with you all an opportunity that came to our attention for a grant funding. This really is, it's through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's called the PRICE program, which stands for the Preservation and Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement. And really the primary goal focus of this grant opportunity is to address folks that are residing in trailer parks, recognizing that there's a lot of issues that those folks face there with property rents and other sorts of things. So Pavel came to me and said, hey, I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to apply for some funds to help out some of our constituents that are living in the mobile home parks. And so Pavel's been working with different service providers that are familiar with this issue and and then also reached out to the Washington State Department of Commerce and realized that the Department of Commerce is also applying for this as a federal program. They said, well, would you all like to partner with us? And so Paul's been working with them. We are really focused on the accident potential zone out in Airway Heights with Fairchild, recognizing that's been an ongoing issue for our community, particularly Commissioner French with your constituents there. So we put in a proposal with the Washington State Department of Commerce. They're going to go out to a 15-day public comment period, and we'll just kind of see where that goes. So just wanted to brief you all on that and then get your support and answer any questions that you may have related to that that funding opportunity.
Great. But Mike, I have a question. So as I'm reading this, this is to help when they're saying revitalize manufactured housing units. So this is to make repairs, fix up the units? Or because when I look at what we're doing in the APZ isn't about improving, it's to get those units out of the APZ. So am I misunderstanding the program?
So the program is nationally based, so there are some throughout the country that are in that situation. We recognize that that is not the case in the accident potential zone. So the proposal that Paul, if you want to speak to the proposal that you've been working on, really is trying to get folks out of there and placed.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't going into fix up units that are in the APZ, because that's not the end goal for the APZ.
Yeah, in Spokane County, we've been working with Habitat for Humanity as well as Community Framework. So those are the folks that Paul has been talking with as well.
Great.
He's also been in communication with Heather Troutman out at the city of Airway Heights regarding that those properties, trying to find some good solutions. So Paul, if you want to share a little more on that.
Sure. So as George mentioned, we've already identified some potential stakeholders. In addition to those three, we potentially could partner with Latinos in Spokane, which have actively been doing community engagement with mobile home tenants and everything like that, trying to move them toward home ownership opportunities. There's a $25 million set aside in the $225 million grant, and it's actually for acquiring property, acquiring manufactured home communities. So whenever we went through eligible expenses through this, we found some potential flexibility in the funding. It's very broad. It's if you're familiar with some of the grants that we have, CDBG is very broad. If it's targeting low income, it's basically eligible. So through this program, our proposal is to potentially acquire some land in the APC to relocate families. Unfortunately, the main focus of this grant is creating affordable housing, not just doing a net neutral. So the proposal would be to create more affordable housing, but with that, we could also provide assistance with the APC and use a portion of that to maybe acquire land and relocate tenants.
All right, good, thank you. Any other questions?
Just one thing to add as well. We put in there that it's a $10 million ask, but Commerce made the recommendation of us asking for 20 million. So with your permission, we would like to make a $20 million ask with Commerce's application.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Good, Commissioner Jordan?
Is that number relating just to Spokane County, or is that a statewide number with Commerce involved? Just trying to get a sense of, is the application just about us, or is it a statewide ask that we're a part of?
Yeah, great question. So that is just the Spokane County ask portion of it. Paul, I believe it's $85 million in total that Commerce is asking for. So and Commerce has also had some work going on out in this accident potential zone as well. And so so they're really invested and interested in this. And even Pavel, as he was working on some of the different match requirements, they said, we will be helping out with your match requirements on this grant as well. So we've got a whole bunch of leverage and other support going into it. And yes, Spokane County's portion of the total grant request will be significant.
I thought this was a great find by Pavel. I know the county's been working a lot with the state trying to get legislative directed dollars coming here so that the county can work with acquiring mobile home parks out in the APZ once individuals been relocated and the mobile home units have been removed. This is just another potential opportunity to do something similar, although there may be some flexibility with placing them in existing Habitat for Humanity homes, but there's also the ability to look for land, place some manufactured homes. At the end of the day, it gets these individuals, potentially get these individuals in better housing, safer housing, more energy efficient housing and whatnot, and then be able to still satisfy the needs of eliminating those trailer parks that are in the APC. So more details to come as George and Pavel learn more about this program.
Yeah, and we'll come back to y'all once we find out whether or not the application was funded.
When we find out the
When we
application.
find out, probably later this year on that one. So, so while we're here,
Speaking of when we find out.
we wanted to transition and just give you all an update. Pavel briefed you back on March 12th regarding another funding opportunity. So this one was for through the Department of Commerce, the HERE program. So that's the home electrification and appliance rebates program. Briefed you on that. It's an opportunity to help low-income individuals be able to improve the systems within their existing homes. So putting in heat pumps, other types of appliance improvements to offset some of the cost of living for those folks. Pavel put in an application for $3 million, and we received notice at the end of last week that we were selected for funding at just short of $1.5 million. So we'll be wanting approval to be able to accept that application so that we can start programming that with some of our different partners that are well versed in providing that level of support to the community.
Great, awesome work. That's great.
Yeah, nice job.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to real-time crime center update. Gina, do we have a?
I did send them an email and asked to come over about 10:05. I know that Lieutenant Elliott had a meeting at.
Yeah, he said 9:30, so, okay. All right, well, do we have any other miscellaneous items? As we can go at ease for a few minutes. Wait.
Good. Yeah.
Anybody have anything for the good of the order? No?
We've got Amber on too.
Yeah, okay. Oh, and just for the record, we have just been joined by Commissioner Waldron. So we're just gonna check and see if our next guest is here. If not, we'll probably take a 5-10 minute break or so.
Just wanted to mention the 11:30 ceremony that was
Yes.
circulated. Everyone knows about that.
Yep.
And there was a candlelight vigil last night that was good too.
All right. Nobody yet, Gina? Okay.
That means the birthday celebrations at 12:30.
So it's like it. All right, well, let's go at it. So it is 10:05. We'll start with 5 minutes. We'll just go at ease for the next 5 minutes, and hopefully our guests will join us in that time, and we will be back. Okay, we are back. It is 10:17. Please let the record reflect that Commissioners French and Kearns are in the conference room. Commissioners Jordan and Waldriff are joining us virtually. Okay, that brings us to our next agenda item. We are joined by Justin Elliott from the Sheriff's Department. We're going to have an update on the Real-Time Crime Center. Take it away.
Thanks for having us again. This is Eric Green, our project manager on the Real-Time Crime Center. He's here. Any additional information? So on this update, essentially, we're moving forward on as we're getting down to the end of the time period for expending funds. We have plan to have them all expended this year as expected. So the next large purchase that we have pivoted on is a program called Peregrine. For those that have a little bit of knowledge of it or been sent some documents ahead of time. Essentially, this is a software system that greatly increases our effectiveness in the real-time crime center by bringing our data that we have, so many different parts of our agency into the deputies or analysts' hands, like we said, in real time. So it's a pretty significant and somewhat complicated system. To boil it down, imagine probably 13 to 18 systems that our analysts, detectives, and deputies have to sign into with logins every single day to search either a person, a vehicle, a case, etc. And this system allows that to happen all at once. It conglomerates that data from all the different systems that we're already paying for. So we'll get some value out of what we already have been paying for a long time, and gives that effectiveness in real time. This would also return on investment save an exponential amount of time for our data analysts in producing reports because it's all automated. So it would change the way that we're sharing our statistical reports right now. In fact, if there's a city manager from one of our contract cities and they want to get real-time data, we can be able to program specific reports to go to them for that specific data for their area. And currently, when you get our crime report stats, they're about 10 days to 2 weeks old data. This brings us back into real time. So that's a very, very brief overview of the Peregrine system. It's a significant cost over 3 years, but we'd be able to negotiate quite a bit of discount and able to pay for this over the next 3 years. The plan for the real-time crime center is to fund years 1 and 2 out of a 3-year contract for a total of, what do we have? 2, let me get my numbers here. It'd be 390,000 for 1 year, 45,000 for year 2, and we'd have a non-appropriation clause involved. And we'd still have to find funding for year 3 out of the sheriff's office budget. So that is the program as we're sitting right now. Well, any questions that are have before I ramble on about some more technology?
Nope, doesn't look like it. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Popping up everyone.
We'll start with Commissioner Walgrave.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Justin, for sending some more budget information. So am I understanding that you are moving money around in your project budget to be able to accommodate this new software, or did you already have it budgeted for?
In general summary, yes. We're at a critical point of clarifying a lot of anticipated funding. For example, we're still pushing on Flock to get, when we moved from a 2-year contract to 5-year contract, there was a lot of credits involved, and that's a big number. So we're trying to get the clarification on what that's cost is going to be. So we had extra money built into that to cover that in the budget. In addition, we had other projects that money's been moved around based on, anticipated or budget costs versus what actual has been. And we're getting down to determining our actuals right now. So we were able to, again, I think we backed off of maybe some additional field cameras to focus on the real-time crime center core, the foundation of what they're doing in there. So yes, to your question. And in fact, we were going over a bunch of this morning, once we're able to identify what actual costs are going to be. And we realized as well that, we had some of the Flock operating system built into 2 different parts of our budget. So that freed up quite a bit to be able to fund this new project.
Yeah, because yesterday, I think I saw an email with a bunch of different budget items. Were those ones that that are savings that you're putting towards the software purchase?
Yes, and that's obviously not as updated information we have now, but that was probably a list of savings from, let's say, salary, from, what was the other list on there that we had, the initial like 300,000 of savings?
Salaries, PTZ cameras, there's some furniture.
Yeah, like furniture costs, we had budgeted 60,000. I think it ended up being like 29. Those type of clarifications in the budget were able to show that we had ability to pivot to this important project.
So what are you anticipating year 3 would cost out of your sheriff's just general fund?
217,000.
Okay, I mean, I'm just hoping that that's something that we can sustain at that point.
I hope so too. That's by covering this to 470 for the first 2 years. We're hoping that we can work on that in the next 2 years with our sheriff's office budget to make that work. But again, if for some worst case scenario, they did build in the non-appropriation clause similar to or exactly like the flock contract, so that if there is no funding, then we're not committed to carrying out that 3rd year.
Is there any way to build in the 3rd year into the contracts and use ARPA funds up front so we know we can be sustainable for those 3 years? Or is this beyond 26? I'm trying to understand. Is it 24, 25, and 26?
Well, the 3rd year would overlap the ARPA funding years and outside of it, I mean, before December of 26. But that 3rd year is not funded in this budget because we don't have room for the extra 217,000 in the real-time crime center budget. So we're short of that in year 3. But again, it's the amount of value this program is going to add, and the time savings is enough, again, for us to want to fund year 1 and 2. But for year 3, we have to work on showing the value and getting it funded in year 3 in 26.
I guess I heard that maybe you wouldn't, did I hear that you wouldn't fund some of the camera purchases as part of this as a way to save and purchase the software?
Yeah, so a little background
because I just get concerned about that. If this is all, the whole premise of the real-time crime center is to be able to pull video, data in order to solve crimes more quickly. And if we don't have a lot of cameras that are connected to the system, it's great to purchase the software. I think it sounds amazing. I guess I'm just wondering, are we going to have enough feed to be able to make it worthwhile?
I think that's a great question. What is the right amount of cameras? What's too much? What's not enough is something we're always trying to identify. So what is just enough is the ability to put cameras unincorporated involves fiber connections or cellular plus power. So there's a lot of issues there. We've talked with Public Works about what we're able to do. But to back up to 2 years ago, when I started the first budget on this, when we started planning this, essentially we started putting buckets of money into, let's say, field assets, salaries, other equipment, and we put a significant amount into field cameras. And once we started getting real costs, I tended to overestimate in most everything. And I could walk you through several versions of the spreadsheet at some point to show you the evolution of it. But essentially, we start looking at what's our priorities here, what's going to give us our best impact on violent crime in the shortest amount of time. And I completely agree that those additional cameras, if we can find funding for those, would add to our situational awareness. But we're going to rely on our third-party partnerships in the community and the hope that, let's say, the city of Spokane wants to participate and give access to their dozens of cameras that are already out there and paid by taxpayers. We hope to have partnerships with the state, with WASDOT, and they did not want to participate. So we're definitely putting efforts and our boots are on the ground. Our scope are out talking to businesses to get camera connections. So we do see the value. Completely, absolutely important point. But again, from our point of view, the priority is what we can do with all the data we already have out there and getting it right away to make decisions and make better decisions for our officers. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, did Commissioner Jordan have a question? I'll let him weigh in.
Yeah, I appreciate as well the information and dialogue kind of to get just a better sense of the budget. So I did see there was a,
You have muted yourself, Commissioner Jordan.
you know, we may need to take Ron off the controls here. Once again. So I just want to let you know, I'll take a look at that spreadsheet because I haven't had time to look at it yet since it came in. Does it kind of explain or show the change in the budget that you're talking about today?
We have a whole new one from this morning I would love to share with you that's much more accurate. And then we are also working on all the line items. But again, the anticipated cost versus actual, we're dealing with our vendor partners.
Right.
Constantly to try to, because some of it's just, you know, a few $1,000s here and there, but some of it's, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. Anyway, which affects some of our other projects within the project. So we can show you that and show how everything will be paid out. We're working diligently with these partners in technology to like bill us for the rest of the ARPA duration so that we can pay up front or be encumbered, because we don't have the ability to just budget this money and pay for it in future years. We have to pay up front to be within the rules. So that's unique. So I can tell you, Eric's working with them regularly, and we'll have it all. You're going to have a lot coming through purchasing in a very short period of time.
And thanks for that. I look forward to kind of looking at the latest spreadsheet. Can you just reiterate or explain, you said that there was some savings in the sheriff's budget that was a piece of this. So is that general fund that you're talking about, or help me understand what that savings is that you have found or may be able to use to help fund this, if I understood that correctly?
Our savings or credits, a lot of them will come from, let's say Flock, we have 46 cameras in the county. They've been slow to get installations because the state of Washington has, an LNI has required electrical testing or permitting before. So that put a halt on installs. So let's say we're on contract for 5 years or 2 years of cameras, whatever, and for 10 months of that, the camera's not on the ground. So there's credits that need to come back on that contract. So that could be considered savings. And the other savings that we've done is on a lot of these contracts with either Flock or Peregrine or First Two or Leads Online, and I can go on. A lot of the savings is negotiated with these partners of getting good deals on contracts and just being able to pay for other parts of it. So again, we can go through the contract with what is already paid, or I'm sorry, the budget, what is going to be paid, what are anticipated, and then if Eric's involved in that conversation as well, we can explain what is what is actual and what's kind of a rough estimate.
So is there any general fund that's a piece of the proposal to pay for this at this point? Just to clarify that.
So once we're past the grant, we're still working on our sustainability plans. I think we've gone for 2 grants on the Peregrine before we brought it to you guys at first, and haven't been successful on grants because money's going in different directions. And we're looking at, conditions of LECAP with sharing with our other agencies. But within the period of this contract, this is all within the ARPA granted funds from the commissioners. And we're staying within that. None of what I'm talking about is outside that until we get out. Let's say year 3 of this contract would be a different scenario. And then the consultants that we hired a while back, they also looked at Peregrine, compared and did an assessment report for us with also support and agreeing it's good for our makeup here and our mission.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, well, that completes all our printed agenda items. So we'll circle back around one more time for miscellaneous. Nothing. Second call, third and final. Okay. Oh, Amber, do you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I saw Martha Lou in the corner there. I appreciate, Martha Lou, you sent me the draft press release around the opioid settlement resolution. is there still time to send in a few suggestions, minor comments?
Yes.
I thought it looked overall pretty good. I just had a few minor things I thought could make it easier to understand for folks.
I also received some edits from the county commissioners this morning, so yes, there is time.
Okay, I'll get it to you in the next hour or so. I'm gotta hop back into my meeting, but I will triple task.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right, well, that does it for this morning. We will reconvene at 2 o'clock for our consent agenda. So we are adjourned for the morning.
See you later.